Hi, Gloria Donahue with Nana's Kitchen. If this looks familiar, it's because we're doing a cookie marathon here, lots of things for the holidays. This cookie is called a Jan Hagel cookie. And this one is the favorite of my Donahue grandchildren. And this is the first cookie that my grandchildren helped me make. So if you like to cook with young people, it's a good one because you press it into the pan. There's no fancy cutting, there's no fancy rolling. It's really something that they can do and feel that they accomplished something. The pan I'm going to put it in is a greased jelly roll pan. It doesn't look nearly as nice as it did 2 years ago when I first got it, because I use it for many other things too, including roasting vegetables and things, but it's a wonderful pan. And this recipe does call for a jelly roll pan. Jelly roll pans are extremely useful. They can be used as an extra cookie sheet. They can be used for roasting vegetables where you might have some juices or oil that come out. Certainly for a jelly roll cake, you would definitely need it. And the standard size is 10 by 15.5, and they really are very useful. Before I go any farther, I want to show you something. I do needlework as another hobby, so I'm very appreciative of it. I have a wonderful niece in Florida, Chris. And this is what Chris sent me last week for Thanksgiving. Is that beautiful? It is quilted. She made it. I love it. I love her. And by putting it on YouTube, I can see it forever. I even go to YouTube myself once in a while and look at my videos. On the Baked Swiss Steak Supreme or something like that it's called, at the end of that video I introduce my family. So sometimes I bring it up and just go to the end so that I can see them all. So that's a fun part. I may not look so great, but I'll be with you forever, folks. Now we're going to do the Jan Hagel cookies. Let me show you. I chop nuts. It calls for finely chopped walnuts, and I do it with this handy little chopper. Put some things in and it turns. But honestly, if you don't have that, I would not worry. Just use a chef's knife and do it. And I've certainly done that many times. Don't try to do so many at one time. Just take a small bit and just chop, chop, chop back and forth and turn, and you'll be able to do it fine. I wouldn't suggest the processor for this because it's really better at grinding nuts than it is at finely chopped because they'll all be quite different. This calls for a half a cup of chopped walnuts, so that's what I'm going to do. We'll see if we have that. It's a very simple recipe, and again, it's pressed into the pan, so you can make it very quickly, not a lot of labor intensive. You know, remember when you cook or when you bake, think about how much labor is actually involved doing it. My probably worst thing in cooking is misjudging the time that I need to do something. Particularly, you can say, I'm going to make a soup. It's an all-in-one meal. Sure, after you chop the carrots and the celery and the onions and whatever. So bear in mind the time that it takes. Also, bear in mind the use of your refrigerator and your stove. Are you going to be able to cook all these things? Are the temperatures that different? Particularly if you only have the one oven, which I'm sure most people do. For the refrigerator, in the winter, I don't particularly worry about it. I can have something cool in my garage. It won't freeze, but I live in the Northeast, so it'll be cool like a refrigerator. In the summer, I don't make too many refrigerated desserts when I'm having people in because there's a very good chance that the refrigerator is going to be filled with chilled salads and things like that, and I won't really have room to put in extra things. So bear that in mind. Bear in mind your time, how you use that time, what you can do and what you can't do. For instance, when I do eggplant parm and I'm frying eggplant, I could have a cake in the oven because the cake is going to take quite a while. I couldn't be making cookies at the same time that take like 10 to 12 minutes because you'd go crazy running back and forth to make sure that each thing was okay. So that's just one of the things. So I have my half cuts of nuts, and I'm going to put my butter, and it's 2 sticks. And this happens to be regular. It doesn't call for sweet butter. Of course, this cookbook is from 1973. They probably didn't even know sweet butter. Betty Crocker Cookie Cookbook. And I've probably had it about that long. So I'm going to put in a cup or 8 ounces, and that is obviously room temperature butter. You can see that. In fact, I'm heating up the kitchen with all this work on the oven and on the cooktop. So I'm going to put, that's 2 sticks of butter. I'm going to put in a cup of sugar. And we're going to stir those two together. Then I'm going to put, I separated an egg, and I'm going to put an egg yolk in there. Just the egg yolk. I'm going to need the egg white for the finishing of it. Now it doesn't really say it needs to be creamed, so I'm just combining. If I were creaming, I would do it a lot longer. Now I'm going to put in 2 cups of flour, and I've put a half a cup of cinnamon into that flour. Am I crazy or what? A half a cup of cinnamon? A half a teaspoon cinnamon, folks. I'm really losing it. And I'm just going to do an on and off. Well, there I'm wearing a little bit. I'm going to look great by the end of the day. I do have more tops and more aprons, but I found last time we were interspersing different recipes at different spaces, and it looks kind of confusing that at the beginning of the recipe I was wearing red, and at the end of the recipe I was wearing blue. So I decided just to stick with the same outfit for the whole day, because we are going back and forth. While recipes are doing something, we're doing something else. This is another one that is fine to mail. It's a very thick dough. We just want it to come together. Okay. Pat all that into the pan. And this is where the kids could come in when they were young. Put it in small, it's a greased jelly roll pan, lightly greased. So it's always better to put in small pats and connect them than to dump the whole thing in the middle and then try to spread it. It just seems to work better. And I would say that's true with every dough that is patted in like this. You know, food goes very quickly. You take a lot of time making it, and then all of a sudden it's gone. But the memory remains. And that's the wonderful thing about food. Chances are people come back from a vacation, and one of the first things they say is a wonderful recipe that they had in a restaurant, something they really liked. So we're just going to pat this in. You might as well come back when I'm done with it. But we're finishing the Jan Hagel cookies. I finished pressing the dough into the pan. As I said, it's a wonderful cookie to make with young people because it's almost like playing with clay. You know, just make sure their hands are very clean and that they get the idea that it must fully cover it. I've got 1 egg white here and 1 tablespoon of water. I've got this neat little whisk that I bought in South Africa last year. But if not, you could just do it with a fork. What you want to do is break up that egg white, and the water will help do that too, because you want to spread it. And you can't spread an egg white as it just comes out of the shell. It is just too mucousy. So even if there were no water there, you would want to loosen it with a whisk or a fork. But I'm going to do it with the whisk. Now I have these silicone brushes. I have 2 or 3 of them, and they're wonderful because you can even use them in a hot pan or something and they will not frizzle like the real hair brushes will do. So they're wonderful for heat. They're wonderful for brushing things. I'm going to brush it over the dough, and I found sometimes that I don't use it all. You just want to make sure that it's well covered because you're then going to put nuts on top, and this coating will keep those nuts attached to the dough. You can see there was really not very many ingredients in this recipe. And now I'm going to take the ½ cup of walnuts and just spread them over the cookies, the cookie dough, and then what happens is that egg wash will help them solidify to the dough. We're going to put that in the oven at 350. Going to get a little finer pieces there. And it is 20 to 25 minutes or until lightly browned. You definitely want it lightly browned on top. You definitely want that dough to be cooked. So we're putting it in at 350. Hi, these are our Jan Hagel cookies out of the oven. And we're going to cut them immediately into long strips. Now remember, it's very hot. So we're just going to loosen it all around and we're going to cut it, but we're not going to do anything with them until it's fully cool. But you can cut the dough when it's hot and it would not cut as well when it cools. So I'm just going to loosen it around the edges. And then what you would do after they're done is just go under with a, with a lifter, and you can lift them up. I always do it by eye, even when I baked professionally. Not very good, I don't think, at determining exactly what was even. I think we're going to probably do 4 across. Just to give a little difference in the shape of your cookies. That's kind of fun if some of them are round and some of them are square. I have frozen them very successfully. Sometimes I do cook a little earlier in the season and put the cookies in the freezer and take them out. Someone asked me the other day, do I ever freeze the dough and then make the cookies later? No, I do not usually do that. If I make the dough, I usually bake up the cookies, then put them in a nice big freezer bag or whatever and put them in the freezer. And I can't think of any that don't freeze well, to be honest, that way. But there's Jan Hagel cookies. I hope you enjoy the making of them and the eating of them, the sharing of them with other people. Be good to one another. Bye-bye.